Hi, this is Mike Maloney with Ronnie Stöferle from Incrementum AG again. And in our last episode, we talked about the potential monetary reset where we shift monetary systems once again, just history repeating. And, there was this great meme that I was going to talk about in that episode of COVID being swapped out for global or for climate change. So it's an Indiana Jones thing where they're suddenly shifting things on us. Well, this goes right along with the monetary system. So, Ronnie, how are you doing, and what have you got for us next?
Hey, Mike, good to see you again. We could discuss the crack up boom perhaps a little bit that my fellow countryman Ludwig von Mises talked about in his opus magnum, Human Action. And I think, what Mises describes is actually happening at the moment, because I can really sense that people are losing confidence in our paper currencies, be it the euro, be it the US dollar, whatever. And I think it's no coincidence that we're seeing cryptocurrencies doing so well, although, of course, there was a pretty big correction recently, that stocks are doing so well, that real estate all over the world is going crazy, that the art market is going crazy, that we're seeing, of course, the bond market still doing pretty well. I think those are all signs for this crack up boom. And what really caught my attention, and you can see it on page 2, was an Italian artist selling an invisible sculpture for more than 18,000 US dollars. So his name is Salvatore Garau, and I love the fact, and I think I'm not sure if the delivery costs are included, but selling nothing for 18,000 US dollars and then calling it art, that's pretty cool, I would say. But it is a sign. It is a sign for, people just having too much money. They really don't know what to do with their liquidity. They're trying to get into real assets, although I don't know if that's really a real asset. But it is clearly a sign for lots of liquidity being out there.
Yeah, to me, this is like the signal that you get at the very end of some big, huge economic boom when things go absolutely crazy. And this guy is selling nothing for something. So, what else have you got for us here?
Well, I would like to talk a bit about the core topic of our 15th In Gold We Trust report, this monetary climate change. And on page 7, you can see that, a while ago, and this was the front page in the year 2019, we had it on Bloomberg Business Week asking, is inflation dead? And back then, nobody really believed in rising inflation. And now we saw Barron's with the front page about the I word being inflation. So inflation is a topic again. And it seems that for our beloved central bankers, it is only temporary, it is only transitory, while from our point of view, it is structural. And as you can see on this chart, I think that's very interesting. We are seeing that for the very first time in a long time, we saw that inflation rates were actually rising already at the beginning of the recession. Now, normally within the course of a recession, we're getting more deflationary pressure. We're seeing CPI diving, and then, of course, aggressive monetary and fiscal policies to counteract that. But in this recession that we experienced last year, we saw that inflation rates were already picking up very, very quickly, and I think that's a very interesting sign that this time it might really be different. And in the report, we discuss the most important drivers why we think that it is really structural and not only transitory.
Yeah, I agree. When was the chart generated in your chart book? Because I think it's even higher than this. This is approaching 5%, didn't it? Last
Yes,
month? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's still with the main numbers.
yeah.
So it is now even higher, and we are still being told that it's transitory. And there's so many numbers that we could discuss, Mike. But I think what's really very important for this for this view that we have is on page 8. I think the fact that Janet Yellen, as the former head of the Federal Reserve, is now being the Treasury Secretary. I think the symbolic character um, cannot be underestimated. And from our point of view, it is really now fiscal policy that is kind of offsetting monetary policy. So I think we all discuss Fed policy a lot, but it is becoming more and more irrelevant. And this is exactly what many central bankers already said before the COVID crisis. In their speeches, they always said, well, actually, we are running out of tools. We can do more QE, whatever, but actually the biggest tool in our toolbox, being interest rate policy, this is basically gone, because we are seeing that negative real rates don't really work. And we see that, with rising rates, we would completely choke off the economy. So they always said, now it is the time of fiscal policy to really make a change. And I think that last year we really saw that. So I think that this that market participants should focus much more on the fiscal policy, especially coming from the United States. And I think the big difference is monetary policy versus fiscal policy. Fiscal policy works, of course, only for the short term. It's like if you drink like 2 or 3 Red Bulls, of course the effect kicks in very quickly, but then it fades off very very quickly too. But we're seeing a much more direct and a faster impact and consequence compared to monetary policy, where through quantitative easing, basically you try to stimulate the economy via the banking system, but you end up mostly with asset price inflation. So I think now, as we're seeing the economy kind of weakening, at least for most of the indicators that we watch, I think at some point we will see even more aggressive fiscal policy. I think that big government is back, not only in the US, but all over the world. I think people are accepting now that politicians want or try to fine-tune the economic cycle. This is well accepted, and I think therefore there will be more packages, more fiscal packages for infrastructure, for a greener economy, for education, whatever. So I think this is really here to stay, and I think the market will still be surprised by the aggressiveness of fiscal policy that will be ahead.
Yeah, for our viewers, the difference between, some people haven't really gotten the difference between monetary and fiscal policy. Monetary policy is set by all of the world's central banks, and it's basically how much currency is there going to be and what is the cost of that currency, the interest rate. That's monetary policy. Fiscal policy is what the government does. Are we going to do a bunch of deficit spending? Are we going to take on a bunch more debt? Are we going to pass this bill for roads and this bill for bridges and this bill for schools and this bill for aid to the stimulus checks? All of that's all fiscal policy. And Ronnie, was it? I believe that Chairman Powell made a statement or wrote, I can't remember, saying that the government needs to spend as much as possible, right? Spend all you want, the Federal Reserve will support it. Didn't he
Yes.
put something like that either in writing or in a speech?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay. That's like there's going to be inflation. That's what he's saying.
and he said I think it was in 2018. And I think this was really one of the most profound statements that any Fed chairman ever made. He said, we would like to smooth out the wild swings of past economic cycles by fine-tuning monetary policy. So I think, it is there is no discussion going on how much the Federal Reserve should influence markets. I think they see it as their job basically to micromanage the economy and the inflation and especially financial markets. And I think, everybody is talking about tapering now and the Fed going on a more hawkish path, although I don't really see that. But I think, we should not forget that probably the most important, let's say, invisible voting member in the FOMC is the stock market. So everybody thinks that, okay, at some point we will see some tapering. It will be announced at the Jackson Hole meeting probably. We will see rising interest rates end of 2022 or perhaps slightly later. But as soon as we see some volatility in equity markets, as soon as we see the S&P being down 5 or 10%, they will, of course, become more hawkish, more dovish again. And they will say, well, we will continue being on this accommodative path. And therefore, I think, actually the Fed is, I would say the Federal Reserve is trapped. They're being basically slaves to the bubbles that they blow, and there is no way out. And everybody who thought, okay, Jay Powell is different because he's not an economist, he's not an academic. I think we learned over the last couple of months that it is just more of the same, and that we shouldn't expect anything new coming out of the Federal Reserve.
Right. And he's definitely taking a page right out of the Ben Bernanke playbook. Whenever anything happens, the solution is create currency. I want to thank you so much for the time that you've given me. And this interview is going to be continued. And I want to wrap up again with that same meme that we opened at. The whole world monetary system, when I look at charts, just everywhere I look, it looks like it's crumbling right now. It has taken a while. The cracks started to appear with the global financial crisis of 2008, but it continues, and things go along and continue until the day they don't. And then, suddenly things speed up very fast at the end. So it's important that people get ready. So I want to thank you very much, Ronnie, for this interview. It's very enlightening. You've got some great charts and great insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's been a pleasure.